Sagittarius. 7 reasons why God is removing someone from your life right now. Sagittarius, there comes a moment when what feels like loss is actually divine protection in disguise. You may think something precious is slipping through your fingers, but what if it's the universe saving you from something that would have quietly broken you? What if what's leaving isn't love but illusion? And this separation is the first act of your liberation. You've been trying to hold it together, making excuses for someone's distance, convincing yourself that if you love harder, stay longer, or understand deeper, things will change. But deep inside, a whisper has already begun. Something is ending. This is not punishment. It's alignment. You're not being abandoned. You're being redirected toward a higher path, one that honors the truth of who you are. God removes certain people with the same mercy that a healer removes poison, not out of cruelty, but because your soul can no longer thrive where it's being stifled. Sagittarius, your spirit was never meant to live in smallness or settle in fear. You were born under the sign of expansion, truth, and fire, a being made for growth, freedom, and honest love. So when the universe begins to close certain doors, trust that it's guiding you toward something more authentic, more aligned, more divine. Take a breath, open your heart, and stay with me through this message. If it finds you today, it's because your release has already begun. Gate 1: When God removes what blocks your becoming. Sagittarius, the first reason God is removing this person from your life is because they were holding you back from becoming who you were truly created to be. You've spent months, maybe years, trying to make yourself smaller, quieter, easier to digest. You silenced your instincts, downplayed your dreams, and disguised your light just to keep the peace. Somewhere along the way, you stopped being the wild, uncontainable fire that defines your Sagittarius spirit and started living as a muted version of yourself. You convinced yourself that compromise was maturity, but what you were actually doing was self-erasure. Every time you apologized for shining too brightly, you betrayed the divine purpose that burns within you. Every time you held back your truth to avoid discomfort, you chose survival over authenticity. But God didn't design you for survival. He designed you for expansion. And when expansion meets resistance, something has to break. This is why you feel the heaviness lately, that sense of emotional claustrophobia that no amount of patience or effort seems to fix. You've outgrown the cage that this relationship became. And while part of you still clings to the memories of who they were, your soul already knows the truth. What once felt like home has become confinement. You can't fly freely when someone needs you to keep your wings folded to make them feel safe. I want you to think of all the moments when you felt you had to shrink. When you withheld your excitement because their indifference cut too deep. When you shared a dream and their response wasn't joy but jealousy wrapped in politeness. When your laughter died in your throat because you sensed their irritation at your happiness. These were not small moments. They were divine warnings. They were evidence that your energy no longer fits in the space you've been trying to inhabit. Sagittarius, your sign is ruled by Jupiter, the planet of wisdom, expansion, and truth. You are wired for growth, for new horizons, for divine curiosity. And when someone in your life becomes a ceiling instead of a sky, God intervenes. The removal isn't punishment. It's an act of grace. It's the universe saying, "You've learned what you needed to learn here. Now rise." There's something sacred in this detachment, even if it feels like heartbreak. Because you're not losing love, you're reclaiming alignment. You're remembering that love should never demand your dimming. You're realizing that loyalty to your soul matters more than loyalty to a connection that keeps you small. Think of the times you held your breath to avoid conflict. The times you rehearsed your words so they wouldn't be misinterpreted. The way your laughter turned cautious, your creativity stalled, your intuition dulled. Those weren't random symptoms. They were signals that your spirit was suffocating. And God, who placed that spark of fire inside you, couldn't watch it go out any longer. The detachment you're experiencing is divine surgery. The gentle but firm removal of what no longer serves your becoming. You might feel the sting of loss now, but beneath it is the soft hum of relief. Because deep down you know this truth. You can't fulfill your purpose while constantly trying to be less than who you are. God is saying, "I didn't create you to live in fear of being too much. I created you to embody the fullness of your fire." And every person who cannot stand beside that flame without feeling threatened will be lovingly escorted out of your life. Not because they are evil, but because their chapter in your story has ended. One day soon you'll look back and realize that this loss was not random. It was rescue. You'll see that while you were mourning their absence, heaven was celebrating your release. Because every ending orchestrated by God is an opening to your next expansion. And if there's one thing Sagittarius was born to do, it's to expand, to evolve, and to never apologize for the brightness of their truth. Gate 2. When the relationship begins to poison your peace. Sagittarius, the second reason God is removing this person from your life is because they have become a toxin to your well-being, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. You may have mistaken your exhaustion for simple tiredness, your tension for stress, your sadness for overthinking. But your body, wise and ancient as the earth itself, has been speaking to you louder than any divine sign ever could. The truth is, you are not just emotionally drained. You are spiritually dehydrated from pouring into something that never refilled you. Notice how your body has been reacting lately. The sleepless nights, the restlessness that even silence cannot soothe. The strange tightness in your chest when you see their name appear on your screen. The knots in your stomach that no doctor can explain. The way your laughter doesn't rise as easily as it used to. This isn't coincidence, it's communication. Your body has become the messenger your mind refuses to hear. You are not safe here anymore. Sagittarius, you are a fire sign, ruled by movement, growth, adventure, and freedom. But when your flame burns beside someone who keeps throwing doubt and criticism into it, your light begins to flicker. You start living in constant alertness, waiting for the next conflict, walking on emotional glass, always preparing for disappointment. That's not love. That's survival. And God never intended for you to survive love. You were meant to thrive in it. There's a subtle kind of erosion that happens in toxic relationships. It doesn't destroy you overnight. It wears you down slowly, almost gently. One day you're compromising a little, the next you're apologizing for existing. You keep rationalizing their moods, excusing their silence, and convincing yourself that every couple goes through this. But there's a difference between normal imperfection and spiritual suffocation. The former grows you. The latter breaks you. And I know it hurts to hear this, Sagittarius, because your heart is loyal. Once you love, you don't give up easily. You believe in redemption, in second chances, in the wild hope that if you pour enough light into someone, they'll finally see their own. But some souls mistake your warmth for a fireplace. They come close just to take your heat, not to share their own. And that imbalance will eventually turn into illness. God sees the fatigue that has settled into your bones. He sees you trying to pray for strength when what you really need is rest. He sees that the heaviness you carry isn't just sadness. It's the grief of constantly betraying yourself just to keep someone else from leaving. And that's why he's stepping in. Because you won't walk away from what's harming you, so he's gently moving it away from you. Understand this clearly. Divine intervention rarely feels gentle in the beginning. It feels like loss, confusion, heartbreak. But in truth, it's God applying spiritual CPR to a dying soul. He's saving your fire from being smothered completely. You may not see it yet, but every delay, every argument, every distance growing between you and this person, it's all divine choreography. It's the universe saying, enough. This is no longer where you heal. Your body and spirit are connected in ways you can't always explain. The headaches, the anxiety, the irritability, they're not random. They are the physical echo of an emotional imbalance. You've been living in an environment of tension so long that peace feels suspicious. That's how deeply you've been conditioned to chaos. But God is about to break that pattern. When this person leaves, there will be an eerie silence at first. You'll wake up without the constant mental noise. It might even feel empty. But that emptiness is not absence. It's oxygen. It's the first deep breath your soul has taken in months, maybe years. You'll realize how long you've been holding your breath. And in that quiet, you'll start to feel something new. Stillness that doesn't feel lonely. Rest that doesn't feel guilty. Sleep that actually restores you. That's when you'll know the healing has begun. Sagittarius, I need you to remember this. You don't owe anyone your destruction in the name of loyalty. You don't have to keep bleeding just to prove that your love was real. Real love doesn't demand your decay. Real love doesn't make your light dimmer. It makes it steadier. The universe isn't punishing you with loss. It's detoxing you from what's been slowly draining your life force. And while this process may hurt, it's sacred pain. The kind that purifies, that burns away what no longer belongs, that makes space for peace to return. So the next time your heart aches for what's leaving, whisper this truth to yourself. I'm not being abandoned. I'm being restored. Because that's exactly what's happening. Gate 3. When God clears the path for what is truly yours. Sagittarius, the third reason God is removing this person from your life is because their presence has been blocking the blessings meant for you. You've been holding on so tightly to what's familiar that your hands have had no room to receive what's divine. Every ounce of energy you've spent trying to fix what's broken has been energy stolen from the future you're meant to build. You've been so busy managing emotional chaos that you've stopped noticing the subtle invitations the universe keeps sending. New doors quietly opening, new ideas whispering, new opportunities waiting patiently for you to look up. You see, when you pour all your light into keeping something alive that is already spiritually dead, it becomes impossible to see what's ready to bloom. And this is the paradox you've been living in, Sagittarius. You've been begging God to bring new blessings while refusing to release the thing that's taking up all the space. You can't receive miracles while you're clutching ghosts. Sagittarius, you are ruled by Jupiter, the planet of expansion, abundance, and divine timing. You were born with an open horizon inside you. But lately, you've been living in a closed room of repeated lessons. You've mistaken familiarity for destiny. You've stayed because the unknown frightened you more than the pain you already knew. And yet, every time you said, "I'll try one more time," your spirit whispered back, "But I'm already tired." God has been trying to send you new experiences, new people, new purposes, but your frequency has been trapped in survival mode. You've been too exhausted from constant emotional repair work to notice how life has been knocking gently at your door, asking to begin again. Your dreams, the ones that used to feel so alive, have dimmed not because they were wrong, but because you gave all your creative energy to someone who never believed in them. You've been investing divine currency in a bankrupt soul. When God removes someone from your path, He doesn't do it impulsively. He does it to clear the spiritual congestion. Imagine a river clogged by debris. No matter how strong the current, the flow will slow until the block is removed. You've been that river, Sagittarius. And this relationship has been the dam. The flow of opportunities, peace, joy, and abundance that once defined you has been stuck behind walls of unresolved pain. God isn't punishing you. He's removing the blockage so your blessings can finally move again. Perhaps you've noticed how lately things that used to excite you feel heavy. How new opportunities never quite seem to align. That's not bad luck. It's spiritual interference. The energy you've been surrounded by doesn't match the vibration of the life you're meant to live. It's as if the universe has been trying to tune your frequency back to your truth, but you keep turning the dial toward noise. Sagittarius, I know you love deeply. I know you give second chances, sometimes 100 of them, because your faith in people runs deeper than logic. But there's a moment when love turns into attachment, and attachment turns into resistance against divine flow. That's where you are right now. At the crossroads where holding on means stagnation and letting go means resurrection. When God begins to remove what blocks you, He often starts subtly. Conversations fade. Energy shifts. Their messages feel colder. Encounters become less frequent. You think it's coincidence, but it's orchestration. The divine is rearranging your life without your permission because your higher self already asked for it in prayer. Remember that night you cried out, asking for clarity, for peace, for a sign? This is that sign. It's just arriving in a form your ego doesn't like. The blessings you've been waiting for are already in motion. The right person, the aligned opportunities, the inner peace, they're not distant dreams. They're standing just beyond the door you're afraid to close. And God is saying, close it. Let me show you what I've prepared. Because when you do, life will move again. Sagittarius, you will not always feel this emptiness. In time, you will see the space they left as sacred ground. Space that will soon be filled with growth, laughter, and freedom. You will rediscover what it means to wake up without dread. To walk through your days without tiptoeing around someone else's insecurities. You will remember what it feels like to live in your full frequency again, to be radiant, restless, and free. And when that day comes, you'll understand that nothing was stolen from you. Everything that left was clearing the way for something far better. You'll realize that your detour was not destruction, it was direction. God was never denying you love, He was preparing you for true love. The kind that doesn't need explanation. The kind that makes your soul exhale. So when it hurts, remind yourself, this emptiness is not punishment, it's preparation. The void you feel is sacred space being made for miracles. You're not being stripped of love, you're being positioned for it. You're not losing a future. You're stepping into one that finally matches the truth of your spirit. Sagittarius, trust this process. You have outgrown the small garden where you once planted yourself. The soil has dried, the roots are tangled, and the walls have grown too tight. It's time to be transplanted into wider land, where the light reaches you fully, where the rain nourishes instead of floods, where your soul can stretch and rise. The loss is only the first step. The expansion is coming next. Gate 4. When God restores the truth you forgot to trust. Sagittarius, the fourth reason God is removing this person from your life is because they taught you to doubt your own perception. Somewhere along the journey, you began to question your feelings, your intuition, your very sense of reality. You noticed inconsistencies, sensed dishonesty, felt the dissonance between their words and actions. But each time you tried to name it, they convinced you it was all in your head. You started to apologize for having emotions. You began to swallow your instincts. You learned to silence your knowing, until even your own truth began to sound like noise. This is not your weakness. It's the natural result of emotional manipulation. Sagittarius, your nature is trusting and open. You see the good before the flaw, the potential before the pattern. You love with faith. But that faith, when misplaced, becomes a weapon turned against you. And God has watched long enough. He's seen you give endless understanding to someone who used your compassion as camouflage. He's seen your spirit twist itself trying to interpret mixed signals. He's seen your self-worth corrode under the acid of constant doubt. And now he's intervening, not to punish them but to restore you. When you lose trust in yourself, you lose access to divine navigation. You lose the compass that helps you sense truth from illusion. That's why the healing of this heartbreak isn't just about getting over someone. It's about reclaiming your spiritual discernment. God is removing the distortion so you can hear your inner voice clearly again. That voice that once whispered, "Something isn't right." That instinct you overrode because you didn't want to seem harsh or judgmental. That intuition was never wrong. It was divine intelligence speaking through you. Sagittarius, you were born under a sign that seeks truth above all things. You are the archer aiming at clarity, at wisdom, at divine understanding. But you've been trying to shoot arrows through fog. The person in your life blurred your vision, not always maliciously, but because their own wounds demanded to be seen more than your truth. You learned to carry their pain at the expense of your peace. You became a translator for someone else's confusion, a healer for someone else's chaos. But the more you tried to heal them, the further you drifted from yourself. God is calling you back now to your own inner temple, to the silence where you can hear Him again. The disconnection you feel from this person is sacred. It's not rejection. It's redirection toward your higher self. The unease, the awkward distance, the fading conversations. These are all part of your recalibration. The divine is gently untangling your energy from theirs, separating your frequencies so you can finally hear your own vibration clearly again. You will begin to notice subtle signs of restoration. One morning you'll wake up and the mental fog will have lifted slightly. You'll look at a message you once obsessed over and feel nothing. You'll reread an argument that used to consume you and realize it no longer requires an answer. This is healing in motion. This is your inner truth returning home. And as that happens, your confidence will begin to return, not as arrogance but as quiet certainty. You'll start making small decisions without second-guessing yourself. You'll feel the energy of self-trust re-enter your body like sunlight through an open window. You'll remember that you were never confused. You were just convinced to distrust your own clarity. God's purpose in this removal is greater than heartbreak. It's awakening. You needed to learn that love should never demand blindness. You needed to rediscover the sacred authority of your intuition. You needed to remember that your heart and your spirit are co-authored by the divine, and anything that tries to silence them is not love. It's bondage. This separation will not just free you from a person, it will free you from a pattern. You will start recognizing similar energies in other people, catching them before they can entangle you again. You'll hear the tone of manipulation and walk away before it wounds you. You'll see red flags for what they are, divine stop signs, not tests of endurance. Sagittarius, the universe is reteaching you discernment. the sacred gift of knowing what aligns with your truth and what doesn't. You'll need this sharpened intuition for what's ahead, because the next chapter of your life will be abundant, vibrant, and expansive. But it will also require spiritual maturity. You cannot enter that chapter carrying the confusion that once clouded you. God is cleaning your inner lens so that when the blessings arrive, you can see them for what they are. And someday soon, you will look back and see this painful removal as the moment your clarity was reborn. You will realize that every tear watered the soil of your intuition, that every sleepless night was a recalibration, that every unanswered prayer was actually being answered in the most merciful way possible. You will whisper to yourself, "Now I see." So let the detachment happen. Don't chase closure, truth itself is closure. Don't seek revenge, clarity will be your justice. And don't mourn too long what left you. It was never yours to keep. It was only ever there to remind you how sacred it is to trust yourself again. Sagittarius, you were made to walk with faith, not fear. This release is not the end of your story. It's the restoration of your compass. The path ahead is clear, and God is guiding you back toward the fire of your own knowing. Follow it. It will never lead you astray again. Conclusion: the liberation that awaits beyond letting go. Sagittarius, by now you've begun to understand what's really happening. This is not rejection. This is rescue. This isn't the universe taking something good away from you. It's removing what was quietly eroding your light. You didn't lose them. You were released from them. And that difference will mean everything as time unfolds. The ache you feel now, the sudden quiet, the unanswered questions, they are the spaces where your healing will begin to echo. For a long time you thought you needed their presence to feel whole. You kept rewriting reality in your mind, hoping they would finally see your worth. But God saw it all along. He saw the sleepless nights, the self-blame, the way your laughter dimmed. And He decided it was enough. Sagittarius, divine love never asks you to shrink, calls you to rise. So when He began removing what no longer resonated with your truth, it wasn't cruelty. It was compassion. There will come a morning soon when you'll wake up lighter. You'll notice that the silence no longer feels heavy, it feels holy. You'll walk outside and realize the air smells different. You'll feel a strange peace where pain used to live. That's the sign that you've crossed over from surviving to living. That's the proof that surrender works. You won't always need to understand why things ended. Some chapters close because they've served their sacred purpose, to shape you, to awaken you, to remind you that your worth was never dependent on who chose to stay. Sagittarius, this is your spiritual graduation. You're not being punished, you're being promoted. So breathe. Lift your head. Thank the universe, even through tears, for the courage it took to remove what you couldn't release. Because what's ahead is radiant. Love that nourishes, peace that doesn't need to be earned, connection that doesn't confuse, and joy that feels effortless. If this message touched something deep inside you, let it be your sign to trust again. Like, share, and subscribe. Not for me, but for your own healing, to stay aligned with messages that remind you of your worth. Your new chapter begins now.